It was a rainy afternoon in downtown Los Angeles, the kind of gentle gray day where people walked a little slower, umbrellas bobbed across sidewalks, and steam curled out of street grates like the city was quietly sighing. Inside a small café, tucked between a flower shop and a bookstore, the soft sound of piano music played through an old speaker near the window. The place was warm, with golden lights and walls covered in pictures of regulars and coffee-stained memories. In the far back corner, where the shadows were quietest, sat a girl no one had noticed. Her name was Emily. She wore a pale blue sweater, slightly too big for her frame, and jeans with worn knees. Her dark hair was pulled into a loose braid, and her eyes, tired but kind, stared at a single cupcake sitting in front of her. A candle stood in the center. UNLIT. There were no balloons, no streamers, no party. Just the quiet hum of people, sipping coffee and the occasional clink of spoons against mugs. Emily leaned forward slightly and whispered to the candle, "This is my last birthday." No one heard her, but someone saw her. Keanu Reeves had entered the cafe just 10 minutes earlier, trying to be as invisible as possible. He wore a dark cap, a hoodie, and jeans, nothing flashy. He didn't come here often, but today he needed a break from meetings, interviews, all the noise. He just wanted a cup of tea, a quiet table, and maybe, for a few moments, to feel like a normal person again. He almost didn't notice her, but something in the way she sat, the stillness of her shoulders, the way her eyes looked at that cupcake like it carried the weight of the world, it stopped him. He ordered his tea, nodded politely at the barista, and walked past the tables. Then he hesitated. Just for a second. He turned and walked toward the back. "Mind if I sit here?" he asked, pointing at the chair across from her. Emily looked up, startled. Her eyes widened. I don't think you want to," she said softly. "I probably don't," Keanu replied with a smile. "But here I am." She blinked, confused. "You can sit," she said after a pause, her voice barely audible. Keanu slid into the seat, setting his cup down gently. They sat in silence for a moment. Then, softly, he asked, "Birthday?" She looked at him, then nodded slowly. He tilted his head. "No candle." She hesitated. "I didn't want to light it." "Why not?" She looked down. "Because it's the last one." Keanu frowned, not quite understanding. "Last one for today?" "No," she whispered. "Last one, ever." The words hung heavy in the air. Keanu's heart tightened. He didn't know her story, but he knew that kind of silence. He'd seen it before, in hospitals, shelters, the faces of people who had given up long before they said it out loud. He leaned forward slightly. "What's your name, Emily?" "Hi, Emily. I'm Keanu." "I know," she said quietly. He smiled softly. "You caught me. Why are you here?" "Needed tea. And maybe someone else did too." She looked at him carefully. "You don't have to stay, I know. I'm not anyone." Keanu shook his head. "Don't say that." She shrugged, looking away. "I didn't plan to come here. I just didn't want to be in my apartment. It's too quiet." He sipped his tea. "Sometimes quiet hurts more than noise." Emily nodded. "Yeah." A moment passed. "What made you say that?" "About it being your last birthday," Keanu asked. Gently. She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm sick. I've been sick for a while, and I'm tired. Doctors don't say it's over, but I feel like it is. And today, I just wanted to say goodbye without saying goodbye." Keanu stared at her. She wasn't even 25. How had life made someone so young feel so done? He looked at the candle. "Can I light it?" he asked. She hesitated, then gave the faintest nod. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a lighter, and gently lit the candle. The small flame flickered between them. Emily stared at it. "Don't make a wish," Keanu said softly. "Make a promise." "A promise, yeah. To yourself. Something small. Something just for you." Emily blinked slowly. "I don't know if I have anything left to promise." Keanu smiled, then promised to stay one more day. Outside, the rain had turned into a soft mist. The cafe grew quieter. And in that back corner, a girl who had whispered goodbye to the world was starting to whisper something else. A maybe. A not yet. When Emily stood to leave, she turned to him and said, Thank you. For what? For seeing me. Always. He replied. She stepped out into the street and walked into the rain. Keanu sat alone for a while, staring at the tiny melted candle, thinking. Then he stood and made a call. What Emily didn't know was that Keanu Reeves wasn't done. Not even close. He had seen that look before. In his sister's eyes. In the eyes of the children he visited in hospitals without cameras. And he knew what to do. He just needed time and a little help. Because if this really was her last birthday, he was going to make sure she never forgot it. Not ever. The next morning, Emily sat by her apartment window, holding a mug of tea that had long gone cold. The sky outside was soft and gray again, the kind that makes people stay indoors, quiet and thoughtful. Birds landed on the railing, hopping and tilting their heads as if they too were wondering what the world was trying to say. Emily didn't know what had happened yesterday. Or rather, she did. She knew she had gone to the café expecting to sit quietly, cry softly, and leave unnoticed. But instead, something strange had happened. Someone saw her, really saw her. And it wasn't just anyone. It was Keanu Reeves. She kept repeating that. In her head. It didn't make sense. Why would someone like him sit across from someone like her? She hadn't told him everything, not even close. She hadn't told him about the medications, about how she sometimes skipped them just to feel something, about how she was supposed to go back to the hospital for another round of tests she was tired of taking. She hadn't told him about her art, her dream of illustrating children's books, or how that dream had crumbled the day her hands started shaking. But he had sat with her anyway. And when he lit that candle, something flickered inside her too. Not a fire. But a spark. Across the city, Keanu Reeves was already working. He wasn't doing interviews. He wasn't on set. He wasn't rehearsing lines or attending galas. He was making phone calls. One by one. To a pediatric doctor he trusted. To an old friend who ran a foundation. To a quiet artist who once battled depression and turned her pain into murals that now lit up children's hospitals. And to someone very special, an event coordinator named Shay, who owed him a favor. It's short notice, he said over the phone. You mean, like, insanely short? Shay replied, her voice playful but surprised. I know, Keanu said, but it's important. How important? Life important. Shay was quiet for a moment. Then she said, okay, tell me everything. By the next afternoon, the plans were moving faster than anyone could believe. Shay had secured a small theater space in Silver Lake, the kind used for community events and poetry nights. It had a stage, curtains, rows of wooden chairs, and a single spotlight that flickered if you didn't jiggle the switch just right. Keanu didn't want anything fancy. He didn't want cameras or celebrities or red carpets. He wanted something real. Something soft. Something that would remind a girl like Emily that the world still had space for her. No crowds. He told Shay, just the right people. Shay nodded. And how will we get her there? I have an idea, Keanu said. And for the first time that week, he smiled. Meanwhile, Emily had returned to the cafe. She wasn't sure why. Maybe part of her hoped he'd be there again. But he was in single quotes T. Just the same barista, the same playlist, the same corner booth. She sat anyway, ordered a small tea, and stared at the seat across from her. When the barista brought over her drink, he handed her something else too, a small envelope with her name on it. Emily looked up, confused. Someone dropped it off this morning, the barista said it was for you. Emily opened it slowly. Inside was a card. Handwritten. Double quotes. Hi Emily. Still here. Good. Meet me at the corner of Bay Street and Eldon at 4 p.m. sharp. Bring your sketchbook. Her heart skipped. Her first instinct was fear. What if this was too much? What if this was some trick? But then, something inside her whispered again. What if it wasn't? At 3:57 p.m., Emily stood on the corner of Bay and Eldon, clutching her sketchbook like a lifeline. Cars passed. Birds chirped. The wind played with her hair. At exactly 4 o'clock, a small white car pulled up. The window rolled down. Inside was an older woman with soft eyes and colorful earrings. You must be Emily, she said. Emily nodded. I'm Shay Hoppin. Emily hesitated. Keanu sent me, Shay said. He's not far, I promise. Emily stepped in. The ride was quiet, but peaceful. Shay didn't press her with questions. She just drove, humming softly, until they reached the little theater tucked between an old bakery and a flower shop. We're here, Shay said gently. What is this? Emily asked. A surprise, Shay replied with a wink. Inside the theater, soft lights glowed. The stage was simple, a wooden stool, a few easels, a microphone, and a curtain. And in the front row sat 5 people. Emily didn't recognize them, but they were smiling. Waiting. Keanu appeared from behind the curtain, holding 2 paper cups of tea. He handed one to her. You came, he said. I almost didn't, she whispered. But you did, he smiled. And that's what matters. Emily looked around, confused. What is this? Keanu pointed at the stage. This is your stage, Emily. She blinked. What? You said yesterday it was your last birthday. But I don't believe that. I think there's more inside you. I think you have something to say, something to share, something the world needs to see. I don't. You brought your sketchbook. She nodded slowly. Good, he said. Because tonight, we're going to fill those pages. What followed was one of the strangest and most beautiful evenings of Emily's life. She was invited to sit on stage. A soft light bathed her gently as Keanu sat beside her and opened a conversation. Not an interview, not a performance. Just a talk. They spoke about art. About grief, about the feeling of fading when no one notices, about being sick and scared, and pretending you're fine when you're not. The people in the audience listened. Some cried, some smiled, and then, when the time felt right, Keanu handed her a pencil. Draw something, he said softly. Right now? Yes, don't think. Just draw. Her hands trembled, but she opened the book, and slowly, a line appeared. Then another. And another. She didn't even realize she was crying until a tear landed on the page. What she drew wasn't perfect. It didn't need to be. It was honest. A little girl sitting under a giant tree, holding a cupcake with one candle. Alone. But not anymore. When she finished, she looked up. And everyone was standing. Quietly. Not clapping. Just watching her. Seeing her. Really seeing her. And for the first time in a long time, Emily felt real. Not broken. Not invisible. Not done. Alive. After the show, Keanu walked her out to the curb. The stars above blinked gently through the night sky. You okay? He asked. She nodded, wiping her eyes. That was too much. No, he said. It was just enough. Thank you. Don't thank me, he said. You lit the candle. I just brought the flame. She smiled faintly. You really think I can make it? I don't think it, he said. I see it. As she climbed into the car, Emily turned to him and said, This isn't my last birthday, is it? Keanu shook his head. Not if I have anything to say about it. 2 weeks had passed since the night Emily sat under the theater lights, her hands trembling as she sketched the lonely little girl with the cupcake. 2 weeks since Keanu Reeves handed her a pencil and told her to draw something honest. 2 weeks since the word last started to feel a little less final. Emily wasn't healed, but something had shifted. She woke up earlier now. She made tea and looked out the window. She still had her pain, the kind the doctors tried to label, and the kind they couldn't. Her illness didn't magically vanish, but for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like fading quietly into the background, and she started to draw again. She didn't tell anyone at first. She just opened her sketchbook each night and let the pencil speak. Some nights it was a tree, some nights a girl hugging her own shadow, some nights it was just color and shape and tears. But every time she finished a page, she felt lighter, like she had emptied a little piece of her pain into something the world could hold. And then one night, she drew something she couldn't ignore. It was just after midnight. The street outside her window was silent, and the only light in the room came from her tiny lamp. On the page, her hand moved slowly, almost like it wasn't hers. When she finished, she looked down, and her breath caught. It was the girl again. But this time she wasn't under the tree. She was standing in front of a crowd, holding a book. Behind her, the tree had become pages, and those pages had turned into wings. Emily stared at the drawing. It wasn't just art. It was a story. And for the first time, she felt something powerful stir inside her. A thought she hadn't dared believe before. What if I could turn this into something real? The next morning, she mailed. Keanu. Subject: I have an idea. Body: can we meet? Please. She didn't expect a reply so fast. But 20 minutes later, her phone buzzed. 3 p.m. Same café. Bring the sketchbook. He was already seated when she arrived, sipping tea like he had all the time in the world. He stood when he saw her and smiled gently. You look better, he said. I feel awake, she replied. That's a good start. She sat and pulled the sketchbook from her bag. I want to show you something. Keanu leaned forward as she flipped to the new page. He stared for a long time, not saying anything. Then he looked up. This is a story. I think so, Emily whispered. What's it about? She paused. Then said, a girl who thought her story was ending. But then she realized it was just a chapter. Keanu closed his eyes for a moment. Then opened them and said, let's make it a book. Emily blinked. What, a children's book? He said. Based on this, your drawings, your story. I don't know how to write a book. Yes, you do, he said. You've already started. But who would publish it? I know people, he said, then smiled. Some of them even like me. Keanu, Emily, listen. This isn't charity. This is me helping you carry your voice further. If you want it, really want it, I'll walk with you, every step. Emily felt tears rising again. But she smiled. Okay, she whispered. Let's try. The next weeks were full of firsts. Keanu introduced her to his friend Monica, an editor with a quiet heart and sharp mind. Monica read Emily's sketches and said, there's something here. We just have to find the shape of it. They worked together in small cafes and libraries. Emily wrote slowly, carefully, and sometimes, when the pain was too much, she stopped. But she always came back. Her story grew with each page. And as she worked, something strange happened. Her health didn't worsen. It didn't get better either. Not dramatically, but she didn't feel like she was slipping anymore. She was holding on, building something. Day by day, line by line. A month later, the manuscript was done. A story, told in whispers and pencil marks. It was called The Girl and the Tree. Keanu read it alone one night. And when he finished, he sat in silence, holding the last page like it was made of glass. The next morning, he made another call, this time to a publisher who had turned him down once before. Read this, he said. Don't say no until you've read it. 2 days later, they called back. We're in full release. We want to fast track it. When Emily heard the news, she didn't believe it. They really wanted to publish it? She asked. Double quotes. Yes, Keanu said. And not just as a book. What else? They want to use your drawings to design art therapy tools for kids in hospitals. They think your story could help others who feel lost. Emily covered her mouth. I don't know what to say. You already said it. Keanu smiled. With your pencil. The first launch event was set for a small children's hospital, where Keanu had volunteered for years. Emily was nervous. Her hands shook when she walked through the front doors. But then, she saw the faces, tiny ones, hopeful ones. And she saw a girl sitting in the corner, quiet, alone, staring at the floor. Emily walked over. Knelt. And handed her a copy of the book. The girl looked up. Is this yours? She asked. Yes, Emily whispered. Did you write it for me? Kind of. Emily smiled. I wrote it for anyone who thought they didn't matter. The girl hugged the book. And for the first time in weeks, Emily's heart felt full. After the event, Keanu found her sitting under a tree near the hospital garden. How do you feel? He asked. Like maybe this wasn't my last birthday. After all, he smiled. You gave them something today. They gave it back. What now? He asked. She thought for a moment. Then looked at the sky. I want to keep going, keep drawing, keep telling stories. Even if they're small, they won't stay small, Keanu said. Not with your heart behind them. They sat together, in silence as the sun dipped low, and though neither said it out loud, they both knew this wasn't the end. Not of the story, not of the fight, not of Emily. A month after the book release, Emily's life looked completely different. Not glamorous. Not perfect, but full. Each morning she woke up, stretched slowly, and made her tea. She still had hospital checkups. Some days, the pain returned like a wave. She had to ride through. Her diagnosis hadn't disappeared, but her reason for waking up had changed. People were reading her story. Children from around the world had started writing letters to her. Some sent drawings. Some told their own secrets, and others just said thank you for writing the book that made me feel seen. Her publisher had already requested a second book, and even more surprising than that, one letter arrived that changed everything. A letter that Keanu read first. It came in a plain white envelope. No return address. Inside was a handwritten note. Not from a child, but from a woman. Dear Emily, I was the nurse who treated you the night your mother brought you to the ER. You were 8. You were coughing and scared. Your mom held you the whole time. I don't think she let go once. She told me she wanted to be a writer once. She said she didn't have the time. But she said you had it, the spark. I saw your book. I read your story. And I remembered something. Your mother gave me a letter that night. She said, "This is for my daughter. Give it to her if she ever starts to disappear." I don't know what that meant, but I kept it. I've moved homes 5 times since then. But somehow, that letter stayed with me. And now, I'm sending it to you. Love. Our Keanu handed the letter to Emily one quiet afternoon at the café. She didn't speak for a long time, just stared at the words. Finally, she whispered, "My mom wrote me something, and I never knew." Keanu nodded softly. Seems like she knew you'd need it one day. 3 days later, a small padded envelope arrived in Emily's mailbox. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was an aged, folded piece of paper, lined, a little yellow, still smelling faintly like lavender. She unfolded it with trembling fingers. And read. My dear Emily, if you are reading this, it means you've reached a moment where the world feels too heavy. I know that feeling. When I was your age, I used to write letters to the stars. I thought if I wrote enough, maybe they'd shine brighter for me. You are my brightest star. I see your light, even when you don't. So if the world gets dark, here's what I want you to do. Hold a pencil, draw something, write something, make something that only you could make. And if you can't do that, just stay, just one more minute, then one more, until you remember, you were born to make the stars jealous. I love you forever. Emily wept. Not the quiet kind of crying, but the kind that shakes your whole body and breaks something open. Keanu didn't say anything. He just sat with her, hand on hers, letting her break and rebuild. That night, Emily posted a photo of the letter online. She didn't expect anything from it. She just wanted to share her mother's words. But the world responded. The post went viral. People copied the letter and printed it. Teachers read it to their students. Parents framed it on their walls, and a movement started. A hashtag Just Stay. People began sharing their stories of depression, of loneliness, of almost giving up, and how one more minute, one more breath, had led to something beautiful. Emily didn't plan any of it, but she became the center of it anyway. A voice not for the perfect, but for the broken, and the world listened. Keanu visited her one evening with a new idea. They sat on the rooftop of her building, warm blankets over their laps, hot cocoa in hand. "What if we took it further?" he asked. "What do you mean?" "What if we started a foundation?" Emily looked at him. "For what?" "For voices like yours. People who think they're done. People who are artists, writers, creators, but who just lost their light. What if we gave them space, time, community?" Emily stared at the stars. "What would we call it?" Keanu smiled. "The Just Stay Project." They launched the nonprofit a month later. It was small at first, just a few people, but it grew faster than anyone expected. People donated, volunteered, shared their own stories. Writers who had burned their journals started writing again. Painters who hadn't picked up a brush in years began creating murals. Musicians who had gone silent returned to their instruments. It wasn't about saving everyone. It was about reaching one person at a time and saying, "Stay, you matter." And every time someone sent in a story, they received a handwritten card with a copy of Emily's mom's letter, printed in simple ink. With a handwritten note that said, "This is not your last page. The world doesn't change all at once, but sometimes it starts with a whisper, a pencil, a cupcake with a candle that was never lit. And a stranger who sat down when he didn't have to. 2 weeks after the launch of the Just Stay project, Emily received a message that felt different. It didn't come from a journalist or a hospital or a bookstore. It came from a girl named Nora. The message was short. Hi Emily, I found your book by accident. I was on a train. Someone left it on the seat beside me. I read it all in one sitting. I didn't plan to go home that day, but your story made me get off at my stop. I'm not better, but I'm still here. Thank you. Nora Heimly stared at the message for a long time. She whispered the words to herself. I didn't plan to go home that day. Then she opened her drawer. Inside was a small, broken pencil, the one Keanu had handed her that night in the theater, the one she used to draw the girl with the cupcake. She had kept it all this time, and now she had an idea. That evening, she met Keanu at the rooftop garden again. He was trimming herbs with a small pair of scissors and humming to himself. Got time for a crazy idea? She asked. He looked up and smiled. Always. I want to give away the pencil. Keanu tilted his head. Your pencil? Yeah, she said. Not really give it away, but pass it on. Like a symbol. Keanu leaned against the bench, listening. What if we made hundreds of them? Small, simple pencils, and every one came with a note that said, make one mark, then pass it on, a traveling pencil. Keanu said, eyes lighting up. Double quotes. Yeah, kind of like hope that travels. He smiled. You've come a long way. Because someone gave me a pencil when I needed one, she said quietly. Within 2 weeks, the Just Stay pencils were real. Plain wooden pencils, soft graphite. No logos, no marketing. Just one line etched into the side. You are not done. They were packaged with a folded card, part blank, part instruction. Step 1, make one mark, a word, a line, a shape, anything. Step 2, pass it to someone who needs it. Step 3, repeat. They gave the first 50 pencils to patients in a mental health center in Oregon. They gave the next 50 to a group of teenagers in a shelter in Brazil. They left a few on bus stops. Coffee shops. Airplanes. And then they let the world take it from there. Videos began to surface. A boy in Sweden drew a boat on a napkin and left the pencil at a train station. A woman in India wrote her daughter's name in the sand with it, then handed the pencil to a stranger. On a bench, a veteran in Texas carved a heart into a piece of driftwood, then mailed the pencil to his old platoon friend who hadn't spoken in years. One pencil. One mark. And then a passing of hands. Like a whisper that carried across oceans. You are not done. Emily watched all of it from her small apartment. She still had pain, still had days when her hands shook too much to draw, still had hospital visits, but she had people. Now. A community. A movement, and a mission. She wasn't just surviving, she was guiding. And it all began with that birthday, that quiet, rainy day when she whispered goodbye to the world, and someone sat across from her and said, light the candle. Anyway, Keanu kept showing up, never loudly, never taking credit, but always in the background, holding doors open, making calls quietly, sometimes he would just text a single line. You lit another one today, and Emily would know. Someone had picked up a pencil, someone had stayed. One evening, Emily received an invitation, not a small one. A global youth summit was happening in Geneva. They wanted her to speak. They had read her book. Heard about the pencil project. Seen the posts. And they wanted her to share her story with thousands of young people from all over the world. Emily panicked. Me, she said out loud, pacing her room. Her cat blinked at her from the bed. She called Keanu. I can't speak on a stage in front of that many people. Yes, you can, he said gently. What if my voice shakes? Then it shakes. What if I forget the words? Then you speak from the heart. What if Emily, he said softly, remember what your mom wrote? She closed her eyes. Just stay, just one more minute, then one more, until you remember. You were born to make the stars jealous. The stage in Geneva was enormous. Rows and rows of young faces stared up at her. Emily stood at the podium. hands wrapped tightly around a single just stay pencil dot. And then, she spoke slowly at first, but then stronger. She didn't tell them she was cured. She didn't lie about her struggle. She told the truth about pain about almost giving up about art about a stranger who changed her life by simply sitting down and listening. She told them, "You don't have to shout to matter. Sometimes a whisper is all it takes." And then she held up the pencil. This saved me once, not because it fixed anything, but because it reminded me that even broken hands can create beauty. The audience rose to their feet, applauding, not the speech, but the truth. That night, she called Keanu. He didn't say anything when he answered. He didn't have to. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For giving me a pencil." He chuckled softly. "You gave it meaning." Across the world, thousands of people now held just stay pencils. Some drew, some wrote, some carved, but every one of them passed it on. And in doing so, they wrote the kind of story the world needs more of. The kind that starts with a whisper and ends with a spark. It had been almost a full year since Emily sat in the corner of that little café, staring at a cupcake she never planned to eat. A year since she whispered, "This is my last birthday." A year since Keanu Reeves, a stranger with kind eyes and a quiet voice, sat down and made her stay. And now, it was her birthday again. But this time, things were different. She woke up not in silence, but to a soft knock on her door. When she opened it, she found a small box wrapped in brown paper with a note on top that said, "Don't open until sunset. Trust me." She smiled. Somehow, he always knew how to keep things simple and magical at the same time. She set the box on the table, made tea, and sat by the window with her journal. She didn't write much, just a few quiet thoughts, some half-formed sketches. As the day passed, her phone buzzed non-stop. Messages from readers, calls from young artists she mentored. Emails from volunteers at the Just Stay Project, and letters. So many letters, from people she would never meet, but who told her again and again, "I stayed because of you." Some had found her book in hospital waiting rooms. Others had picked up pencils from park benches and airport chairs. One girl in Tokyo shared a photo of a single line she had drawn on her school desk. A butterfly, barely visible, with the note, "I didn't know I could still make something beautiful." Emily cried. Quiet tears, not sad ones. Grateful ones. Because a year ago she had wanted to disappear, and now she was helping others reappear. As the sun began to set, Emily sat in her favorite chair and opened the box. Inside was something simple. A sketchbook, hand-bound. The cover was soft leather, etched with gold. On the first page, in Keanu's handwriting, were the words, "Happy birthday, Emily." Not the last one, just the next one. She flipped the pages slowly. Each one was blank, but taped to the inside of the back cover was a folded letter. She opened it. "Emily, you once whispered into a candle and thought no one heard. But I did, and the world did too, because your voice, though quiet, carries farther than most shouts ever could. You are not the girl with the last birthday anymore. You are the girl who teaches the rest of us how to stay, how to hold on, how to start again. So keep filling these pages, and when you're ready, give the book to someone else, and remind them they are not done." That night, Keanu didn't call. He didn't send a text. He didn't show up at her door. But he didn't need to, because his gift had already arrived in so many ways. In every pencil pass, in every child who drew something new. In every story that ended with a comma instead of a period. At midnight, Emily lit a candle. Just one. Not for the past, not even for the future. Just for the now. She closed her eyes and whispered, "I'm still here." Months passed, then a year. Emily kept writing. Kept drawing. Kept showing up to schools, hospitals, libraries. She published 2 more books, both filled with the kind of quiet magic that made people cry and smile in the same breath. The Just Stay Foundation expanded to 10 countries. And still, somewhere in the background, was Keanu. He never stood on stage. Never asked for his name to be printed. But sometimes Emily would feel it. A quiet shadow behind a school auditorium. A familiar laugh backstage. A note on her chair that simply said, "Good Mark." He was there always dash. Then one spring afternoon, while teaching a writing workshop for teens, a girl raised her hand. How did it all start? She asked. Your books, the project, everything. Emily paused, smiled, then said, someone sat beside me when I was alone, and he gave me a pencil. The room was quiet. That's it. The girl asked. Emily nodded. That's all it took. On her next birthday, Emily didn't whisper into a cupcake. She didn't sit alone in a cafe acute. Instead, she walked onto a small outdoor stage in a city park where hundreds of people sat holding blank notebooks and sharpened pencils. And she said, a birthday isn't always about cake or candles. Sometimes it's about remembering that you're still here. And that means there's more to do, more to make, more to say, more to live. Then she pulled out a small box. Inside were 50 Just Stay pencils. She began to pass them through the crowd. One by one. And as she handed each one off, she repeated the same words. Make one mark, then pass it on. Somewhere far away, Keanu watched the video of that speech from a quiet cabin tucked into the woods. He smiled, closed the laptop. And picked up a pencil of his own. He didn't draw anything special. Just a circle, a beginning that had no end. Then he wrote one line beneath it. She thought it was her last birthday, but it was the one that changed the world.